Hey yo, what's up guys? And welcome to the second video. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a React Native Turbo module, but for Android. Now, I'm assuming you know what's a Turbo module since you clicked on this video and you want to know more, but if you don't, Turbo module is just how you would create modules that you would call from JavaScript, and then they would invoke, like for example, a function in iOS or Android, and for example, Kotlin, Java, or Objective-C, Swift. And usually you would use that if you want to expose like native APIs, right? Notification, camera, and anything else. So this is the second video I'm doing kind of on this channel. And in the first video, I showed the same thing, but for iOS, like the iOS platform, how to create turbo modules for that. And in this video, I'm going to show you the Android, all right? And actually, I'm going to continue on the same work like that we did in the previous video. And I just named kind of the directory, the project, whatever, React Native Showcase. I uploaded it to GitHub. So if anyone would like to kind of follow along, I created a branch called feed turbo module IS, and that's where we left off last time, right? So I cloned the repo. Let me switch to the same branch. The only thing I did is I just cloned the repo, I ran yarn, and then I went into the example directory inside our project, and then I ran the command that builds up builds up the Android app, right? Just ran yarn to install dependencies, cd to example, and then ran yarn start inside the example, and then ran this one to get the app up and running. All right. If you are watching, if you're following from the last time, that's good. You're just where I left off. If not, you can just clone the repo. All right. Let's get into. Let me increase the font size here. So, if you haven't watched the previous video, let me explain to you what we're going to do. What we're going to do is, actually, let me go back. Again, just let me say that I'm using here NeoVim as my editor, but you don't have to. You can use whatever you want, VS Code or any other editor. This is just what I'm comfortable with, all right? Yeah, so when we are creating a module, usually you'd have like some functions, right? Or some functions that the users of your library would use. And when you are creating a React Native Turbo module, I'm just going to go through the stuff that we went that we've already done last time. I won't code it again because it's already there, but just going to explain, right? So usually you would provide some functions that you would allow a library user to kind of call. And in our case, we define these 5 functions, and they just show off like different ways of doing stuff, right? Like for example, reverse string, it's a simple primitive input, primitive output. Get numbers, returns an array. Get object, returns an object. Promise number, returns a promise, and call me later deals with callbacks, right? So these are the different kind of stuff that you may use. And so the reason why we define them here inside this thing called spec, which extends from turbo module, is because we have to do this because of something called codegen, right? So codegen is something like inside React Native that generates code according to our spec or specification, I guess that's what it stands for. So we are saying to codegen, these are the functions that we want to kind of call from JS that need to invoke something in like iOS and Android. So generate code for that. And what does it generate? For iOS, usually it generates like a protocol, and then you have to, what was the name? I forgot really, but like not adapt to the protocol, but basically like you need to, I forgot, like there's a word for it, but I forgot. But anyways, when your class like says that it uses this protocol or follows this protocol, you have to do like define the functions. And on Android, it creates an abstract class which with these functions. And what these kind of ensures type safety, because then you don't really need to guess what does the function get as a like an argument and return from the function. These are all generated and you just implement them, right? You just implement. Yeah, so we have to kind of do this, export the interface, which extends turbo module, and inside it we define all of the functions that we want. And one important thing that you guys need to know is the place where you define your specification has to be in a file that starts with native, okay? Like you see this file is called native showcase. It's because it has to start with native, all right? And one more thing is, how does React Native, like when you install this package, right? How does React Native know that it needs to generate code, right? Like how does it know in which directory is your specification, right? And actually, if you go to the package.json, there is a codegen section, and in here it says JS source there, and it says SCRC source, right? And that's where we are defining our specification. So it's important that you keep these in sync, right? So here it's source, then the specification has to be in source. One more thing we did in the last video is we just exported all of the functions, which are get object, get numbers, cumulative, promise number, reverse string, and we added this type, right? Showcase is our module, and we are saying that the type of it is spec, which is our specification here, all right? And finally, what we did is also we went into the example source app.tsx, and we just kind of used the functions that we created and like added a button for every function and just like really exercised each one of them to check that they're working. And that was working for iOS. Now for Android, I ran the app and let's try to kind of use it. I mean, it should fail, right? It says reverse string is not a function, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't work. And so we basically need to implement it. All right, so actually let me close this Android and let me just do it with you. So in order to kind of code the Android part, I recommend you to use Android Studio, right? In the previous video for iOS, we used Xcode, but for Android Studio, like, it's the best kind of editor for that. And that's what I'll be using, all right? So you need to open up Android Studio. You don't have to use Android Studio. You can really just, I don't know, use Notepad or whatever. Like you could use literally anything to kind of just put text inside the file, but to get like IntelliSense and like warnings, errors, whatever, just to kind of fail early when there's an error, it's best to use Android Studio, all right? And usually when you want to edit, or like when you want to develop the package that's in an example app that's generated by the script that we used in the last video. So if you don't know how we created create React Native library, something like that, I guess. Okay, I'm just going to show you like how did I scaffold this project, just in case you didn't see the previous video, but I really recommend you guys to go and watch this. So there's just this script, npx create React Native library, and you add the name of the library, all right? And with this, there's it creates the package for you and the example project. So back to what I was saying, if you want to develop the Android library that comes in this, like when you execute this script, you need to go, this is React Native Showcase. You should not like open this Android. You should go to the example and this Android. So it's not the first one, it's the one that's inside example. All right. And let's open it up. And actually we'll get an error. I'm not really sure if you'll get that, but let's wait for it to kind of do its thing. Oh, did we? Oh, okay. I guess we don't get an error because So the error you'd get is if you open the Android that's in the first directory. But since we opened the one that's inside the example, that's all good. All right, now if you see here, this is the app, like this is the example app. And then you see also our package that we are developing. It shows up here, even though we opened the example app. All right, now in order to like develop our package for Android, I would like to explain something for you. Since we are creating a turbo module, and not only are we creating a turbo module, we are creating a turbo module with backward compatibility. As I explained in the previous video, turbo module works on the new architecture. All right, so if you have an app that wants to use your project, but it's not on the new architecture, it will not work. All right, so we're not only going to create a turbo module, we're going to create a turbo module with backward compatibility. And what that means is that if you have an app that uses the new architecture or the old architecture, both are going to work. Good. Now, actually, let me go here. Okay, so what I want to explain to you is that in order to have like to make the module work on both the new and old arc, there are actually two directories inside the Android. Okay, inside Android there's like source, new arc, old arc, and depending on the architecture that the user is using, one of these will be bundled in the app. So we need to make sure to kind of implement the module twice, but we're going to kind of simplify, like not really write the entire logic once. As I said twice, we're going to write it once and then reuse it both in the old arc and in the new arc. All right, but that's just one thing to keep in mind, is that we kind of need to kind of create two modules, not one, and each one for like different architecture for the new and the old. So as you can see, when you open up React Native Showcase, you're going to see this Kotlin plus Java directory. And if you open it and then open com.showcase, we see showcase module, showcase package, and showcase spec. All right. And if we just open it like in the normal like directory, not in Android Studio, we see that there's source, main, Java, com, showcase. And this showcase module and package are these two. And this showcase spec in the old arc is this one. So if we check the content, it says, let me increase the font, I guess we do, no. Okay, let me see how we increase the font, just in case it's not, okay. Okay, so as you can see, this showcase spec says abstract class, whatever, then there's React context-based Java module. And if you check the old arc one, it has the same thing, all right? So, but the new arc one does not have this like React context-based Java module. So what we're currently seeing, in Android Studio is the old architecture module, but I would like to start with the new architecture one. For that, we need to toggle like a Boolean, all right? We need to expand this Gradle scripts, and then there is Gradle.properties. Yeah, so this file, we need to just switch new arc enabled from false to true, all right? And like in the normal like directory kind of, you just go to Android and there's build.android, inside the example, and then Android, and then Gradle.properties. Here you need to switch this one to true. Now, when you do this in Android Studio, it tells you that some stuff changed and you need to sync. So let's sync. Because when you sync, now this file here, showcase spec, is going to now include the new arc, the one that's under the new arc directory, right? This one. That's good. Now, as I said, when we created the native showcase.ts, when we created this spec, as I said, that there's something called cogen that generates an abstract class. So actually, this is the abstract class, native showcase spec. But currently there's an error. It says unresolved reference. And that's because the cogen did not run yet. and we need to invoke it. And the way you would invoke it when you are developing, like usually when someone installs your library and build the app, this happens automatically. But in order to kind of do it manually, inside the React Native Showcase, inside example, you go into Android, and then you run the script. Dot forward slash gradlw or gradlu or whatever way you like to pronounce that, then generate CodeGen artifacts from schema. So what this does is generate like CodeGen files from our schema. And let's hit enter, and it's going to do some stuff. And we should know, yeah, exactly. So the error now goes, and if we click command and click here, we see that this is an abstract class. And it contains our functions. Like, as you can see, this generated an Android class with our functions: reverse string, get numbers, get object, promise number, call me later. So that's good. Now, what I want you to do is, I want you to go into this place, like React Native Showcase, Kotlin plus Java, com.showcase, and change this module and name it like, think like right click and then refactor, rename, and I want you to name it like the same thing plus impl, okay, and then press refactor. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I want to create an implementation for the module, which is the common file, all right? And then I'm going to reuse this implementation inside the new architecture module and the old architecture module, all right? So since we now changed this name, I want you to go ahead and just delete this stuff because we don't really need the context. We don't need the Act application context in our case. And we can just delete everything here, okay? Now, the nice thing about CodeGen is that it literally just generates all the kind of signature of all of the functions. So what we can do is we can go to this, like here, showcase spec, which says that it's like kind of implements or like what's it called, subclasses the spec, and then we can enter to the enter the spec and literally just copy all of the functions, right? Like this saves us time. So now just copy them. Now here it's going to ask me, do you want to convert, like, since the spec is written in Java and our file is written in Kotlin, it asks me if you want me to, if I want like Android Studio to convert from Java to Kotlin, and yep, please do it for me. And now that I did that, now these are just abstract functions, but we want to actually do the implementation. So let's just delete this stuff, and I don't want it to be optional. So in order to reverse a string, let me check out my notes here because I mean, I don't know every programming language. Yeah, in order to reverse string, you just do return str dot reversed. Simple as that. Way easier than Objective-C. And for get numbers, one thing that you need to be aware of is that this writable array is really not like in a native Kotlin or Java type, all right? It's more of a it's a defined custom type from the Facebook library, com.facebook.writable array, okay? And in here, we're going to create a writable native array, right? So that's how you create a writable array that's that we can return. And then we're going to do a for loop, start it at 0, and say until 10, and then numbers.pushInt I, and then we just return numbers, okay? So the only thing we kind of did here, so that's the whole idea of get numbers, just show off how you would return an array. And you can then use this in whatever like way you want when you're like exposing like a native API that needs to return an array, right? You just create a writable native array, and then you push whatever you want. So there are like push other stuff like push array, null, boolean, map, double string, but we are just pushing an int in our case. Next, we have the get object. It's kind of similar to the one above. We need to create val object equals to, writable, val. Okay, so object is a reserved keyword, seems like. What did I name it? Map equals to writable native map, and then create a new object, and let's return it here. And then we say map dot put string, or you can put, so like like a map is a data structure usually that has a key value pair. So usually the key is usually a string, and then the value you can add whatever you want. So you can add boolean in double null map string array, whatever you want. But for our case, we're just gonna keep it simple and add something like kind of, I think in iOS we did success or result. Result is success. So this kind of what this creates in JavaScript is an object with the key of result and value of success, right? That's all we're doing here. Okay, so actually it's funny enough, it seems like we have not a typo, but object, OB, both are capital, and the code gen followed us. Let's check. Yeah, OB are both capital, doesn't matter really, we can just keep moving. Promise number, the way that you do promises. So the way that we said we're going to implement this promise number is that we are going to resolve the same value that we got, right? I'm going to resolve the promise with the same value that was passed in, but just to simulate that this took some time, we're going to add a delay, right? And to create that, let me check my notes. Yeah, so actually just to call the promise, you just do promise dot resolve now, and value. Now if let's say for example you want to reject this promise, like there's just another method called promise dot reject, right? And you can pass it a throwable or just a string or whatever you want, but we're just going to resolve. And in order to simulate that, oh, it took some time, we're just going to use the handler from android.os, and then looper, and then get main looper, and then dot post delayed, right? And add in 2 seconds. So like if you're coming from JavaScript, and I'm assuming you do, this is kind of similar to the set timeout. So in here, the post delayed takes in an anonymous function, and this is just an anonymous function that does not take any arguments. And inside this function, we are calling promise.resolve, and we are saying for it to kind of wait 2 seconds. And for commulator, we are going to, let's remove the optionals. This doesn't have to be there. We said we are kind of just based on randomness, we're going to call either success or failure. So to get a like a random boolean, it's pretty straightforward. Random dot next boolean. So if it's true, we're going to call success callback dot invoke. So that's how you would invoke a callback. And otherwise we call failure cb dot invoke. Now again, the callbacks here is a React native, like a React defined type. So this is not really a Kotlin or Java thing. But again, since like callbacks are usually involved in actions that take time, let's just add in a 2-second delay just to simulate like stuff taking time, right? And let's just make this equals, yeah. And with that, we actually like implemented the logic of our module. Now, what I want you to do is to go to the React Native Showcase, Kotlin plus Java, and then this showcase spec. I don't want you to name it spec. I want you to name it showcase module. All right. Let's refactor, rename, and call it showcase module, and then hit refactor. Let's open it up. Let's remove the abstract, and let's remove these. And yeah, so now we get an error, and that's because our function, which is inheriting from this abstract class, it's not implementing the methods inside this abstract class. So if we hover over it, we can press on implement members, and it will implement all of the members, right? Like all of the member functions. And so how do we leverage now this implementation module that we just created inside our actual module, right? So what we can do is we can just create a member instance or class instance, like an instance variable, right? So this is a variable inside a class instance, and we can call it module implementation. And then we assign it a showcase module implementation. And literally all we do now is we just return, we just invoke the implementation module. Like it should be straightforward. So for reverse string, we just return module impl dot reverse string, and we pass it the string. And this is not like that. For get numbers, we say return module impl dot get numbers, done, return module impl dot get object, and for promise number we just say module implementation dot promise number, and we pass it the value and the promise. So I hope like you see what's kind of happening here. We're literally just delegating all of the functionality to the implementation and having every function just called the implementation, right? And same here. We just say return. Actually, we don't have to return here, and even the one above, we can skip because they don't. Oh, they don't. They don't return anything, right? We can skip that. Finally, now we're very close to kind of finalizing this. Well, what was it called? Like for the new architecture. Now we just need to go to showcase package, and in here there are two functions that needs to be implemented, and actually they're already implemented. We just need to edit this one. And what does this function do? It's a function that, given a module name, it either returns a module or null. All right. So what we do is we check if the name of the module that's passed in equal to the name of the module that we know how to create, which is the showcase module dot name. So if you see here, showcase module impl has something called companion object. Companion object is literally just a like equivalent to other equivalent in other programming languages to a static class variable, right? So it's a variable that's associated with the class and not with an instance of a class. So we're saying if the name equals to showcase impl.name, then we don't want to return an implementation, we want to return the module itself. And done. One more thing, just as an added extra, with this library, when it scaffolded our turbo module, it added this code. Now there's one thing with this is that this constructor is deprecated. We can fix it. The only fix is this has constants true. We just deleted. You don't really need to pass it. And now there's no more this cross, and it's not deprecated anymore, because this is the new, this is what's the not deprecated version, right? And now we can just run the app again, I guess. I hope it works. Let's see. Okay, now let's see if what we've done is good so far. But one thing you need to keep in mind is that to know if you are on the new arc or not, when the app starts, if there's this fabric equals true, that means new architecture is enabled. So for us, it's it has the new architecture enabled. Let's press reverse string. Nice. We get the string reversed, get numbers. Yep, get object. Yeah, promise 1, 2. Promised value is 5. Callbacks 1, 2. And now either success. Yeah, but this is random, so we can really click it I don't know, 1,000 times, and then you get this randomness, right? So it gets called 2 seconds later. Nice. Now we implemented the new architecture, the module for the new architecture. Now, as I mentioned, let's take a look at the module, not from the eye of Android Studio, but just from the normal directory structure. If we see this new arc, we see that this was renamed to be showcase module, which is exactly this one, right? However, the old arc is still showcase spec and it's still not implemented, right? So in order to implement this one, what we need to do is we need to close everything. I mean, you don't have to, but I like to kind of clean up stuff here. We go back to Gradle.properties again, and now we toggle it back to false. And that is to disable the new architecture or turn the new architecture off. And now we see the showcase spec, which is the old architecture file. And what we can do is we can literally just go to the new architecture and copy almost everything, all right? Because they're literally doing the same thing, except for just, it wasn't copied. Let's go here. Yeah. So they're doing literally the same thing, other than they're extending from different objects, from different classes. And one more thing is that the functions here will be decorated, the methods will be decorated with something. I'll show you right now. So let's remove the overrides. The reason there's an override in the new architecture is because it was extending from the abstract class, which is the spec, which expect us to create the methods, right? But here, this is not expected from us, which is actually a bad thing, right? Because it's good that the new architecture kind of force us to implement the functions, right? But in the old architecture, it's like, yeah, define whatever you want, and hopefully it works. Let's import the functions, sorry, the types. I'll just copy this and get promise and callback, right? Actually, promise was already there. Let's delete. Okay, and now we need to add one more thing. Now this won't work. I guess it won't work, but we need to add one more thing, and that is for the class, we need to decorate each method with add react method, and you need to specify if it's synchronous, if it's blocking synchronous method or not. Now, all of the functions that return something directly, they are a synchronous blocking method. So we need to set this to true. Let's go ahead and do that. However, for promises, since promises return nothing and they like just invoke something later on, it's really not a blocking synchronous method, and we can set it to false. And with that, oh, so one more thing is we need to also rename this to be showcase module, right? Because that's also what we did for the new architecture. Let's refactor that. And let's go back to the package. Do we have any errors? Seems like we do. Cannot create enough an abstract class. Yeah, so this should not be abstract anymore. And this will ask us to just implement one member, which is getName. So this React context-based Java module, I think it's also an abstract class. Yes, so it's an abstract class that I think base Java module, because it's not here, like you need to define a getName method, but really all we do is we return the same name that's in the implementation. We just return this one, okay? So let's go ahead and do return showcase module impl.name. And with that, if you go back to the package, the error is gone, and now we are good. Let's go ahead and run the app again. Now that we are on the new arc, and how are we going to tell that we are on the new, now that we are on the old arc? And how are we going to confirm that? Is that now, since previously there was this fabric true, but now, as you can see, there's only this root tag, which was here, but there's no this fabric true. So now we're in the old arc. Now let's try to reverse the string. Works, get number works, get object works, promise 1, 2, boom. Callbacks 1, 2, success. Let's a couple of times for the randomness, and there you go. old arc, new arc, Android. Previous video was iOS, and with that we are done. I hope you guys like learned something new in this video. I hope you understood how to implement turbo module for Android for both the old and the new architecture. If you have any comment for me, like something to improve, maybe like something that I missed, maybe you want me to explain more or whatever, just provide feedback. That's really beneficial for me just to know like what's good, what's not. One more thing is that I'm hoping to create a C++ turbo module tutorial. So let's hope I do that. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, just so that I know you liked it. If you did not like it, hit dislike. I also know you didn't like it. And then if you want to just know when I post a new video, hit the subscribe button. And yeah, see you guys next time. Thank you.